Alright.
Hello.
Hey, I have a background. I'm trying to upload it real quick. Oh.
Where are you right now, Jack?
I won't let me do it, so we'll just roll with it. Hello and
Okay.
welcome. What is up with my camera right now? Let me check the connection. Oh my. Oh,
Hey, everyone.
is that
Hello.
it? No. Here, let me just switch these out. Take this off. This. A little better? No. Oh my gosh.
I think it looks fine. I can see the
It looks
funky.
orange to me. This plant right here.
Yeah, it does.
That's
But
not
you
okay.
look
That's
normal.
not okay. It's not what I'm supposed to be like. I'm freaking out right now. Sorry, we got some technical difficulties.
Can you see if and when folks are joining in? Uh-oh. Lost your audio. Oh no, it's just me. That's not good enough. There we go.
I have no clue what's going on.
I think it's fine. I think you look normal. It's just the plant is orange.
It's the plant is orange. Everything behind me is orange.
You need to water that thing, put it in sunlight.
Well, I mean, we're just gonna deal with it and hope for the best. Let's see, make sure my audio is good. Cool. Luckily, audio is the more important part than this live stream. So, yeah, I was gonna have a logo overlay ready thing, but it won't let me do the background. So, actually,
I do think it looks just fine.
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, awesome. That's a lot better. That's
cool.
a lot better. Cool. Well, we're gonna start now. Okay, cool.
All right.
Hello and welcome. We're streaming right now live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Welcome to the Process of a Profit podcast. If you're watching this live, I'm whack colors right now just because my camera connection looks like it's been a little bit bad. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's just I have it connected to a USB hub and then to my Mac. I don't know what's going on, but doesn't matter because really the audio is the important part here. And I'm excited to talk with Carly Finck. She used to work in a startup here in Wilmington and now is in a big marketing research firm, Gartner. So I'm super excited to talk about all things career and skill development. And it seems like it's something that you really like to talk about anyway. So it should be a sweet conversation. But thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for y'all joining in and listening. Like Jack said, I am from Wilmington. I like to claim it as home, but I actually moved to Dallas for this new job with Gartner. So moved here without knowing anybody. And now I am overwhelmed with an abundance of incredible friends and colleagues. And I am thrilled to be here and so glad I moved.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you can give us a little bit more background than that. That's sort of just really surface level. But yeah, let us know how you got involved with the startup was Apiture. I'm fine name dropping things. I don't really care. But the startup here was Apiture. It's a fintech company, right? One of the many we have around here. But they grew rapidly, and that's really all I know. I know all those people that work there, I think now too or something. But yeah, give us a little intro about how you got involved there and maybe like what you studied in school, where you went to school, how you just developed in your career.
Got it. Awesome. All right. So the background is I initially from Chicago, but I feel like that doesn't count because I was a kiddo and there's not a whole lot to dig up from there. Then we moved to Raleigh for my mom's job. My mom has always been extremely hardworking. She's worked for the same company actually for 37 years and is still working there. Ooh, the color
You did it on
is
camera.
it.
I knew it was going on. So, okay, here's what the camera thing was going on. I just got a new green screen because we're updating stuff here. I'm getting a new mic, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go off real quick.
No, go
I'm
for
getting
it.
a new mic and a whole new setup, mixer, new mic, screen and all, because we're updating the back of our office space into more like a podcasting studio.
Oh, cool.
Different than what I got going on here. This is sort of my custom setup. But I had I was playing with the green screen and I left the settings on. And so what we were seeing why the plant was orange is because it was tracking the green plant and it's making it like a brick color. But yeah, so that's what was going on. Cool. We fixed it. Everything looks super good now. I'm excited. Let's get back into what you were talking about.
Yes. No, we love it. We love when things can be fixed and it looks great. The plant is nice and healthy now. So I'm really happy for it. I love my plants. We're just hanging out here with my plant in front of me, my work plant. Anyway, I could nerd out on that. But okay, so I was talking about how we moved to Raleigh for my mom's job. She's been with the same company for 37 years. Super impressive. I am so impressed by her determination and her loyalty to her company. And she's in full-time sales. So, of course, it's inevitable I would end up in full-time sales. My dad is also in full-time sales. So the background is I moved to Raleigh, did middle school and high school there. I moved to Wilmington for college. So I went to UNCW just like Jack. And I majored in communications, AKA I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I liked talking to people. So I just chose communications. Again, with like no goal or idea of like vision for what I wanted to do. The only thing I said I didn't want to do was work full-time at a church. Well, don't we know God created humor, because the first career I had out of UNCW was a full-time job at a local church in Wilmington for just over 5 years. So that was a wild ride, very surprising. God was full of surprises. And I ended up, I took the job because I loved it. I was already volunteering all the time with this group. It was with the students. At the time, there were hundreds of students, and revival had just hit. And so I was just so drawn to this church, so drawn to this group of students. And so I gave my life to ministry for 5 years. And funny enough, I'm no longer in ministry, which is just wild. I feel like a lot of times
you just don't think you are.
Well, it's different. It's different. I'll get into that.
Direct ministry, yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of times people flip-flop that. Like they might start in corporate America and then, give that up and go to ministry and take the big pay cut and become missionaries or whatever. But I started off in ministry. God taught me a lot in that season. It was also just so much fun. I was like the trip planner, event planner, and all other kinds of things. And we just got to travel the country, at some points the world. And so I had a lot of fun in that job. And then as far as moving out of full-time ministry, working at a church, I knew that the Lord was calling me out. I knew that He wanted to be a light in a dark place, and that I was just getting a lot of skills in my ministry job. And I did not expect it to be 5 years. I thought it'd be like, just like temporary, like 1.5 years, 2 years, kind of get my feet wet and figure out what I want to do, buy some time. No, that was totally what was meant to be for that season. And then because you mentioned Apiture, I'll go ahead and name drop. And if you're in Wilmington listening, you already know what this company is. But Live Oak Bank is an incredible company in Wilmington. Love the people, love the leadership. And most of my friends back in Wilmington still work for Live Oak. But one of my friends was a recruiter there, and she just gave me a heads up that there would be some positions opening that she thought I would be a really good fit for, because let's be real, ministry to banking, there was no way I was going to work at a bank. But she was right. Once all the news came out and I could finally get some information about the company they were starting called Apiture, I called a bunch of people. I got a lot of wise counsel. I did as much research as I could, talking to folks at the bank. to understand what this was going to be, but it ended up being an online banking software startup. And the job was pretty much like the girl wearing all the hats to kind of make this thing happen and get it, started from the ground up. And so my title was executive assistant. And if you know what that means, that's just anything and everything. But I ended up really thriving in that role. Of course, it was very administrative, which I'm good at administrative things, but I don't always love administrative things. But this role provided a lot of room for creativity. And so when they were building out their office space, I got to be really involved with the facilities and the design and kind of making those last decisions on where we'd have outlets and what kind of couch in the lobby and how it was going to face, and getting to buy the plants and getting to instill happy hours and kegerators and wine coolers and all those fun things. So I got to really kick off kind of like the culture of Apiture, and a lot of those colleagues would call me like the culture queen, and the president called me like the CEO of culture. And so that was a really, really, really fun and fitting job for me. So moving forward, coming out of the admin type role, the president of the company continued to say, like, I just see you soaring beyond like an assistant. I don't want to lose you, but I really want you to be client facing. I want our clients to know who you are and to see your face and to have conversations. And I honestly, Jack, I really was just trying to avoid sales at all times, because both my parents, like I mentioned, are in sales, and they were just like, don't do it. It's such a roller coaster. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It can be a roller coaster. And so I was avoiding sales at all costs. And thankfully, this role that was opening up was customer success instead of full sales type of role. So we already had customers, and I was just like managing those relationships. And I just dove in and loved it. And so I just started getting hungrier and hungrier for more of like a proper sales role. And because Apiture was such a startup and so new, they were still building their new products. And I just felt like God was ramping me up, and I was like ready to go into a new world of sales, a new career of sales. And there's so much to this story, as far as like a 9-month journey of feeling like God was telling me I was going to move. Like, not only was I going to change careers, but I was going to move out of North Carolina. And I was so resistant. If you're familiar with Wilmington, I remember walking the loop one day. I walked the loop all the time. It would be like my prayer time with God and just like my me time. And I remember him, like 5 months before was the hurricane. You remember Hurricane Florence? September 2000, I don't know.
Yeah.
18? I think it was 18.
Yeah, it was my junior year, I think. September, November. I don't think we had school all in November. Yeah.
Yeah, that was wild. So if you remember anything about Hurricane Florence, Wilmington was the direct hit, and our highways turned into rivers. And so most of us evacuated. I mean, we were told to evacuate. So I had evacuated to Charlotte, which, if you know anything about North Carolina and Raleigh and Charlotte, they're kind of like rivals. I've learned that Dallas and Houston also very much rivals. Where it's like, if you grew up in Raleigh, why would you ever go to Charlotte? If you grew up in Charlotte, why would you ever go to Raleigh? And they always argue about which one's better. But I ended up going to Charlotte and spending 11 days there, safely, escaping the hurricane, thankfully. And I realized, like, I love this. I love this city. I love just the city life and all that comes with it, just the diversity in so many different ways, not just people and backgrounds and ethnicities, but like the job market. There's a very diverse job market, and there's a lot of diverse like neighborhoods and districts and areas where you could live or you could visit or spend your Friday nights or Saturday nights at. So I tucked that away, like with me and God. And I did tell my mom and my best friend who lived in Raleigh, because I dare not tell anyone in Wilmington that I loved the city life, because they would have never let me ever explore the idea of moving. And then, or that's just what I told myself. But 5 months later, I was walking the loop, and I felt like God was saying, it's time to start talking about the city and, what I showed you 5 months ago. And I was like, no. nope, you're not moving me. I'm not ready. I'm not doing it. Like, I love North Carolina. I love Wilmington. I'm not going anywhere. And I had just lived in Wilmington for over 10 years at this point, and I felt him say, well, we've been through this before. If you are not willing to open your hands to me and what I have for you, it's going to hurt when I have to pry them open for you.
Mhm.
Like, it's going to be more painful when I have to like physically open your hands for you versus you
Mhm.
being willing to surrender all your dreams and desires and preferences, especially staying in Wilmington forever and ever. Amen.
Mhm.
So, I mean, Jack, I was physically walking the loop like this for the entire rest of the way. And I had started like on the very beginning of the walk. So it was like 2 miles of me
Mhm.
doing
Yeah.
this. So, and I didn't care what anyone thought. I increasingly don't care. You'll notice, like, when you get older, the older you get, and just the closer you get to Jesus,
Yeah.
you care what people think. We're gonna look weird at times, or all the time. I'm okay with that, but yeah. So I opened my hands, and pretty much by the end of that walk, I was like, I think God's gonna move me. So then it was several more months of the journey and praying and trying to figure it out. So essentially, here we are in Dallas, Texas, working for a massive global corporation called Gartner,
Yeah.
highly reputable.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
I
yeah,
used to
I've heard.
interview. I'm very good friends with a recruiter. That was when I was like thinking getting a jobs in town, and that's when I
Mhm.
actually mainly met you and like reached out to you too,
Yeah.
because I was going to all these business events and
Hmm.
tables and all, and just walking around and seeing what newer companies in Wilmington had marketing teams, and none of them really did.
Yeah, I
And so it
know.
was really impossible for me to be like, oh, I want to work with like Encino or Live Oak and stay in town and do marketing for them, because they weren't like, no, we really don't.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it
It's
was very
wild.
difficult for me to look for a job.
Hmm.
But by me doing that, I would literally like find people I knew, get their card, and then reach out to the recruiter and be like, hey, I know this person. I've been
Hmm.
talking with them. So
Yeah,
that was my in with you, is I was like, hey, I know her.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, and I've done that with other businesses too. But I was really good friends with and I interviewed Jeff Stencil. Pretty sure that's his name, the recruiter for Gartner. There's I think a few others that have been around UTW as well, but he was a
Yeah,
dominant guy I've talked with. But yeah, I like what y'all are doing, and it's
yeah.
more of a marketing research company, correct?
It's all the things. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a research and advisory company, but we have an arm, like a vertical for marketing, for
Mm-hmm.
finance, for technology, HR, etc. So I'm in the technology boat, and it is their bread and butter. So thankfully, it's massive. So there's a lot of opportunity within Gartner for technology. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I am a senior account executive for Gartner for technology, which means I have clients in mid-size enterprise, and my clients are CIOs and their right-hand men and women. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really fun, which is similar to my background with Apiture, because my clients then, when I was in relationship management, were also CIOs, because we did online banking. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's so cool to look back and see how God equipped me in so many areas. I mean, all of us can look back and see his hand just like trace throughout our lives, where he just equips us in different seasons for the next season. And like, even in that season at the time, we might be like, what is going on? What are you doing? I have no idea why I'm here. What's the purpose? But it was like potentially really humbling time, but also it was an equipping time where he was like throwing in new skills um, for the next season. And that gives us the confidence to step into it as well. Like, when I realized one of the qualifications for this role was experience with selling into CIOs, I was like, wait, all my clients before this were CIOs. Like, I thought this was like a huge leap. I didn't think there was a chance that I could get a job like this from where I came from. But here's the thing: if God wants you to have a job, you'll get the job. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, I learned that from my counselor in Wilmington. Like, if God wants it to happen, it will happen,
Mm-hmm.
as you live, surrender to him, and you're willing to be obedient. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
so
think
that's
the
why I'm
biggest
here.
question I got right now is
Hmm.
just, I guess, your career development and how you went from a basically like ministry or working with the church to a startup now to like a really big company. I feel like that's not typically the career path that a lot of people take. A lot of people maybe start younger in bigger companies and build positions that way.
Yeah.
But you just jumped from position to position from a startup to a bigger company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, glory to God, because it almost makes no sense, just like you're saying. And I think it is a big, just like it's favor is how I describe it. Like I joke all the time with my friends about like, oh, we're just walking in the fog, which is favor of God. And so like an acronym for favor of God. And it's just like, you never know what can happen even beyond like what makes worldly sense. So I definitely feel that way with this role. But as far as like skills and development, I mean, most of this all happens for me like through prayer and like where he's going to direct me. Then once it's happening, I'm not a huge reader. Like I do read, but I don't love it. And it's not like the main way I learn. I like to learn like with experience, like hands-on. So a lot of it is just I'm learning as I go. And I think that's what's so important for people to understand is you'll never be perfectly ready for that next thing. So whether that's a new job, a promotion, even in your role or at your company, whether it's singleness to marriage, whether it's marriage to having kids, like we're not going to be perfectly ready. No one's perfectly ready to be a homeowner either. As everyone knows, stuff like that is full of surprises. And so when it comes to career development, I mean, thankfully, Gartner has an incredible training program. I think we're like known, I don't know, I'm sure we win like awards. I can't even keep up for how intense and thorough our training program is. So get this, I was actually in training for 5 months before I got my clients and like started my role. We call it like going live. So I started in August and then I didn't go live until January. So it's all of August, September, October, November, and December. And so the way they do it is like intensive learning about Gartner, like becoming a Gartner expert. And then it's a lot of role playing, like you're talking to your clients. And those are really intense because you do role play in front of the whole training class with the trainers. And so I had a really challenging and humbling time in that part of the training program. And then it's a lot of shadowing other sales folks that are on the floor already, like they're live, they have clients. And so it's a lot of listening to their calls, taking notes, debriefing, talking about it, and then role playing with them as well as you prepare. And so then Gartner, once they feel like you are ready, they align you and assign you to a book of clients. And so thankfully, I kind of got the introduction of alignment in December because they saw a spot for me on the floor with, a great fit with a particular sales manager. And then I was officially live in January. So yeah, and they were right. Like my manager is the best in the world. I joke with him all the time about like, wherever you go, I will follow. We work so well together because we're complete opposites. And it just works. And so encouraging anyone out there, don't be afraid if the people you work with on your team are super different from you. You need to leverage their strengths because most likely those might be your weaknesses and vice versa. So we really need each other. We need that diversity and that variety of strengths and differences to ultimately make us stronger. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Are there any soft business skills? Because you mentioned how you worked with some clients in Apiture that carried over to Gartner, not necessarily clients carried over, but the same type of CIOs carried over. Are there any soft skills that carried over from working in a startup to now working in a bigger company?
Yeah. So I would say, the skill that I personally ride on for my life career is the fact that I want to be a relationship builder and I want to be trusted by my clients. And so something I take very seriously is number one, being 100% genuine all the time, no matter what environment you're in, professional, personal, at the park, at a party, or on video calls with CIOs of companies that have, $2 billion in revenue. And so I think in general, it's just a matter of really building that confidence. So whatever that takes for a person is building the confidence in order to be authentic in everything that you say and do. Because if you're not authentic, then most likely you're not consistent, and people can smell inconsistency on other people. And when it comes to business and sales, people buy from people. We'd like to think like, oh, people buy the product because the product speaks for itself. And that is partially true. But when it comes to people, having relationships with people, it's really important that buyer is going to trust the seller just as a person, because they know they're not going to let them down. They've already built this trust-based relationship. And that's something that Gartner really instills in their training program, but also just naturally something that I've always valued and I've always carried personally and professionally.
That's awesome. Yeah. Does that carry over to you getting jobs too? So I know, because we can talk about how you like shifted from working in ministry to, I'm battling a sneeze right now. So if you can't tell,
I can see it rubbing your eyes.
Yeah, I'm freaking out right now. I'm like halfway there. I'm just not doing it. I don't know. I'm freaking out. It's hard. I'm trying to keep my composure over here. But moving from basically what you were doing into roles, obviously, like you have to go through recruiters and know people. Are there any tips you can give people when they're trying to get jobs? Maybe it's not off the bat being like an admin assistant or a senior account manager, but knowing people and knowing the recruiters. Do you have any tips for people as they try to find jobs?
Yeah. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of doing your research before you ever talk to a recruiter. Knowing that company inside and out, like studying their website, like going into every single tab. In addition, I recommend knowing who you're going to be talking to. So if it's the recruiter, you go on their LinkedIn and you memorize their background and you build rapport with them. Like, hey, I saw that you also went to a school in North Carolina. That's awesome. Like I did too. Did you ever know so-and-so? Or, did you ever try this restaurant down the street from that university? I mean, rapport is really important, and it impresses that person to be like, oh, they're paying attention. They cared enough about this job that they're going to do research, not only on the company, but on the people that they're interviewing with. And so in Gartner, I had 4 rounds of interviews, really intimidating stuff. And the last one, they fly you down for 3 days, actually, and you do multiple interviews in person. And the last interview is with a VP of sales. And that VP basically decides whether or not they want you. And it's a matter of whether or not they want you on their team. And so like, it is, the pressure's on. And my VP was actually switched while I was on the flight to Dallas. And so I had done all this research on the other VP that I was supposed to be meeting with. And then, there's a conflict, like they had to leave town or something.
Oh, man.
And then they gave me a new VP and I was like, are you kidding? But again, when you walk in that fog and you look at that new VP's LinkedIn within hours before the interview and you realize they went to Christ for the Nations, they went to Dallas, Dallas Baptist University. And you just kind of do a little Google search. You realize, oh my goodness, this VP used to play guitar for Carrie Job. And so I'm over here like, okay, Lord, I see you, changing things last minute. He did a lot of those kinds of details for me, including like a crazy tornado that I dodged because my flight got bumped up 3 hours earlier last minute. I mean, so many things happened where I just felt like, even if I don't get the job, I feel like God is all over this, that maybe I'm just supposed to move to Dallas, despite the fact that I don't know anyone. So, I know the question was, what do you recommend? My first answer is always prayer. Pray about every decision that you make, because it's in his or her heart that a man or a woman plans their course, but it's God who actually determines or establishes their steps. And that's Proverbs 16:9. And there's a ton of verses regarding plans and, your next step and things like that, and committing your work to the Lord and committing your plans to the Lord. But that is like the scripture I use for life decisions, like that are seemingly bigger and feel like there's a lot of weight behind them, like career decisions or moving to, another state. So do your research, get the names of everyone you're going to be interviewing with, know their background, try to build rapport with them, especially in the beginning, just to show like you're a human, you recognize they're a human. Doesn't matter that they make 10 times more money than you do. It matters that they're a human with a heart and you're a human with a heart. And again, people buy from people. That's just how life is. Like, we're all built for relationships. We're all built for community. And so when you can show somebody, whether it's a VP who's hiring you or a client who's going to buy something from you, that you're a human being and that you're trustworthy and that you care about the relationship, life will go so much better than trying to be the perfect like robot that knows everything, that can impress you with all my skills and all my knowledge. That's just not it. I think a lot of times through school, we think that we need to be the smartest that we can possibly be and the most impressive and read all these books and tell them all the books that we've read. And what I've learned in my journey is actually just being authentic and real and being dedicated to the work in front of you.
That was going to be my question, was like how, as a culture, we've almost made people want to feel perfect and be that way instead of almost like building rapport and being people persons.
Yeah.
But you mentioned school and how we're through school and how everyone wants to be like the top of their class, and that's what people think, like, oh, that's how I get into school. That's how I get into the school I want to go to.
Right.
And that's now how I get the job I want to. When ultimately I feel like a lot of getting the jobs you want to is through networking and just knowing people.
Yep, absolutely. And you've always been good at that. And I'm glad that you learned that at a younger age, because I think a lot of people don't learn that till later. And it can make us feel behind. But another thing I want to encourage us in is like, you are right where you're supposed to be. And so if you don't get into that school, if you don't get that job, if you don't get to move to that city that you dreamed of, it's just something else. Again, that's your heart that's planning that and hoping for that. But it's God who establishes your actual steps and directs you. And so I think that people like us who are people, we need to lean into that instead of being discouraged, like, oh, all I'm really good at is networking with people and being good at relationships. No, that's not all you're really good at. Like, people live their whole lives trying to develop these soft skills, right? Because they do see the significance. So just actually, instead of feeling like it's not enough, lean into it and be like, well, these are my strengths. So I need to hone in on these strengths and make my strengths even stronger, instead of, oh, I need to focus on my weaknesses and constantly get those up to par with where my strengths are. We're human beings. We're not like Jesus, yes, was a man, but he was God. And so he was the only perfect man that ever walked this earth. Will never be perfectly strong in every single area. We can't put that expectation on ourselves. Like, we are going to be weak for the rest of our lives, but it's actually like in our weaknesses that we will find strength, especially when the more we just embrace them. And again, we can be humbly authentic and, hey, I'm just not good at blank. And that's okay. And the more honest you are, like, I know people are probably interviewing who are listening to this or who will listen to this. The more honest you are about your weaknesses, the more like attractive you are to the person who is deciding whether or not they're going to hire you, because they're like, okay, well then, like, at least they're not lying to me. And I can start thinking about who I would pair them with, whether it's a team member or a mentor or their manager who's really strong in that area. Like, for me, for example, I was so afraid of sales because of like the contracts, like the legal contracts. I was scared of the numbers, the percentages, commission, and how to calculate all of that and what that means. And so I was like scared of the legal stuff, scared of the math. And so thankfully, because I was open and honest about that, they paired me with the perfect manager who thrives in those areas. And so, yeah, just whatever that looks like, it doesn't have to be the same story as me, but where you feel you're weak, just don't be afraid of that. And don't be afraid of telling people that, because it actually is probably going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, you don't just say, oh, my biggest weakness is being too devoted to work.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. And let's be real, now that we're all working from home, and well, a lot of us are, I mean, I am, as you can see, but when you work from home and you've got distractions at home, I mean, for me, like I live alone, I'm single, so I'm the only one living here day to day. But I think about people who have roommates, I think about people who have kids. And even for me, my distractions are, oh, I need to do the dishes. Oh, I need to do the laundry. Oh, it's so
Never a
beautiful
distraction for
outside.
me.
The sun is out. I want to go on the walk, you know? And so there are more distractions at home. And so just don't worry. Just don't lie to people saying like, "Oh, I'm too devoted to work." Because let's be real, especially now that we're home, ain't nobody that
And
devoted to work.
maybe that's us bad as a culture being like, people struggle to even answer that question, like because of social media and because of how we do schooling these days. That people struggle to think like, oh, what are my weaknesses? Because all people do is think of, oh, what are my strengths? I'm going to show them off. That's how people get jobs. That's how people get into school. That's how people do all of this stuff these days. Nobody even thinks of like, oh, like, are my weaknesses actually good? And like how by me answering this question and by me actually being honest about what my weaknesses are, or even like, how do I recognize my weaknesses too?
Right.
We just don't, as a culture, I think it's a lot hard. It's getting increasingly hard for us to see like and answer that question.
And what I want to be clear about is know what your strengths are and being confident in them. And so when it comes to those interviews where they're like, oh, where are you really strong? What are your strengths? Own it. Say, I'm really good at this. Like my previous manager used to always recognize me for this, or all my friends told me that that I'm good at this. I've always been good at this professionally, personally. But when it comes to weaknesses, and if you are someone who's struggling, God bless you for not knowing what weaknesses are. Like, I'll pray for you. And that's been a journey for me. Okay, that's been a journey for me, is to recognize my own. But ask somebody, say, hey, like in confidence, and this is scary for me. This is like vulnerable for me. But what would you say are my weaknesses? And you can ask your current team members at work, your current boss, but say you don't have that full-time job at the moment or yet. Ask the people around you. Ask your roommate. Yikes. Ask your best friend. Ask your parents. Because most likely your weaknesses in your more personal life are going to be weaknesses in your professional life. Like, especially if you, again, are an authentic, consistent person. And so don't be afraid to own your weaknesses, just like you should be owning your strengths.
That's really good. That's really good. I think also to get people, it's hard for me to ask these questions because I'm not a big career person, obviously, me being an entrepreneur. But how do you set goals for yourself, being that like you used to be in ministry? How would you set long-term and also short-term goals, and how would those change over what your job was?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about this in the gym yesterday. Funny enough, Jack. That's something Jack and I also bond over, is staying healthy and exercising and the importance of that. Like I loved fitness so much. I used to I couldn't afford CrossFit back when I was in Wilmington, but there was a CrossFit in my neighborhood and I would walk over there during the big like competitions and stuff on Saturdays. So another area that I would see Jack killing it. But yeah, I think, I used to not understand like what goals looked like for my life, professionally and personally, which is strange because if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 3, and the name for an Enneagram 3 is the achiever.
Yeah.
So it's so strange.
I hang out with a lot of 3s.
Yeah, I'm not
some of my roommates, I hang out with a ridiculous amount of 3s. And it's hard it's almost hard for me as a 7 because they're always battling for attention. And I like attention too a little bit, but I'm also like, I can also sense their room and be like, oh, I don't need it. I'm fine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's rare that I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit back and like, let someone else be the center of attention, because I love to like plan things, run things, host. And so, the achiever thing is, I think it's weird that even though I've been like achiever, performer, and that kind of mindset all of my life, putting goals on paper, like quantifiable goals, has been difficult for me. And, in some ways, especially in ministry, it's hard to have quantifiable goals
Yeah.
I'd be really like cautious
I know that. Yeah.
of that. But when it comes to work, it's just Gartner has a saying of like, we're the best at getting better. And so the focus is to always get at least 1% better every single day. And a lot of that can feel cheesy, but it's real, and you feel the culture and you feel the camaraderie with your team of leaning on each other and learning like what they're working on so they can inspire you to know what you should be working on if you are a little confused, like what should my goals look like. So the honest answer is I still struggle with setting quantifiable goals for myself, whether that's in the gym or at work. But thankfully, Gartner, being as data driven as they are, because we are a data company, sets all kinds of goals for every single person. And so we are metriced very seriously and intricately. And so like I have my quota, and I have even down to like, this is what you should be bringing in every single month, down to the penny, literally. And I actually had that meeting with my manager yesterday. So they kind of set my goals for me, but in the areas that I know I can afford to be better, it's just something I have to wake up and fight for in prayer, because I think it is impossible, I mean, to do anything, without God's help, and for it to actually matter and for it to last. And so, yeah, I know that's not like a super clear answer, but honestly, it's because I really do struggle. Like in the gym, it might look like, oh, instead of doing 22s today, I'm going to shoot for 28s. And, that's like, I can see it. But at work, when it's so fluid and it's your day to day, and again, like it's still a lot of relationship management, it's like, okay, maybe I should get more. It's a lot about getting meetings too. Thankfully, in my role, I don't do a lot of prospecting I don't do any prospecting outside of the clients that are given to me. But those meetings look like prospecting within my clients. So it's not just my CIOs, but it's all their teammates who may not have experience with Gartner and who may need their own membership. And so it's like, okay, well, I want to hit, like by this week, I want to get 6 meetings with people that I've never talked to before at these organizations. So whatever works, whether it's writing it down in front of you, whether it's putting reminders in your calendar, which is what I do, like reach out to this person, or if it's asking your manager to hold you accountable, which is what's happening as we speak. Like I have pings coming in on my work computer of, this is where we are. Like we've got another day to hit these goals. And so again, Gartner is very goal oriented because we're data company.
Yeah, I would say it's sort of the same boat as me. Sometimes I'm really good at setting goals, but sometimes they're just really hard to meet. So like me with building a business, it's like obviously like long-term goal is I want to build a successful business.
Right.
And that can be like self-sustaining and all. Short-term goals is I need to be self-sustaining month to month and have income for food, rent, whatnot. But also in the same sense is like I don't need to necessarily make 10K off the bat. If I can make 2K and have a few really good clients that I can serve really well, like that would mean so much more than just maybe quantity over quality. I would like 10K a month. But just gotta set their short-term goals first because I'm building a brand, and I want to meet my long-term goals too, but also I need short-term successes as well, so I can sort of almost drive my long-term goals.
Well, and that's real, especially for entrepreneurs. I'm not one. Maybe I will be one day, but it's real that you need to set up a system where you celebrate the small wins, and that's something that Gartner also does. Gartner's taught me a lot. Is even if it's a 2K deal versus a 200K deal, celebrate it because you got to win. Like you won someone's trust and you locked in like another deal, and any amount of money is like for the business and for the team is a win. And so especially when you're starting out, I mean, patience is the name of the game, right? But so is perseverance. And I think about the scripture, oh my goodness, like what is it? Perseverance produces hope or something, or character or whatever. Hope or character. Yeah. It is. I'm looking it up.
Oh, it's one of the oh, what is it? It's the key things, just like perseverance. Yeah.
So here it is. We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment. The other thing I thought for you, just when you were sharing, your entrepreneurial
We're like
spirit,
the race is set out for us, that we don't let the things that entangle us.
Oh yeah, the
too
race. I think that's in Hebrews.
There's they mentioned perseverance too, and like the things that are so meaningful are like perseverance, love, kindness, gentleness. Like it's one of those that's in the list of multiple other things.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then the last one I was thinking of for you, specifically with what you just shared about like the short-term and long-term goals, is whoever can be entrusted with little can also be entrusted with much. And so I think just be encouraged that like God will take care of you always. He's Jehovah Jireh, he's provider, and that's who he is. It's in his character, and he's 100% consistent, flawless. And when he can trust you with a little bit, and you're loyal to that, and you steward that well. Because if we think of God as like the owner and we're the manager, whether it's our own personal finances or it's the businesses or dreams that he's given us, he's the owner, we're the manager. If we can be entrusted with the little that's given us, he's going to keep entrusting us with more. And that's just facts. That's facts. Luke 16:10. And so anyway, just be encouraged that, patience is the name of the game. Perseverance is the name of the game, but it's going to strengthen your character ultimately. And I trust that more is coming if you, of course, steward it well.
Well, I know you said you had an hour for free, so I'm going to let you go. But do you have any other quick tips for people who are, I guess, younger than us, people who are we mentioned a little bit about like recruiting and that earlier, but do you have any quick tips for people who are in college and maybe studying business or communications and maybe you want to get into marketing or just maybe don't even know what they're going to do yet? Do you have any tips for them?
For sure, because remember, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in college, and I just felt like, God will show me at some point. And again, he did the very thing that I thought I would never do, which was put me in working at a church. So my recommendation would be, don't stress yourself out over it, because like something is coming, it will happen. And then the biggest thing that I think I learned, especially when I transitioned out of ministry to online banking, like where is the connection? But the biggest thing I learned there is don't be afraid of trying new things. Even if you do fail, or even if you do realize, yikes, this is not at all what I want to do. Like I feel pretty strongly after my experience gaining the knowledge that I did about banking in general and working with, banks as clients, is, I don't really get excited about banking. Like I just don't like that. And it's not fun for me. People are fun. I like the people, I like working with people, and I like, my clients. But banking is probably one of those industries I can just like cross off my list moving forward, because it's just not that fun. And even bankers and people who are like underwriters would probably say the same thing. A lot of them I have like one friend in banking that like actually loves banking. Because that's how he was wired. But I guess my encouragement would be, even if it doesn't feel like the dream job, even if it doesn't feel like something you ever imagined yourself doing, if you feel like you have peace about it and it's being offered to you, don't be afraid to take the risk and just try something, even if it's for a short season. Because what happened with me, again, very like untraditional path, as we've discussed earlier, I don't even need to go into it, but what happened to me is I was able to learn and acquire certain skills that applied to every next step of the way. In every role that I've had within all three different careers and companies or organizations. So don't be afraid to try. It's okay if you decide you want to leave or move into a different department later. Also, like financially, I think it's important. Two things. Don't worry about like finding the job where you make the most money, like straight out of the gate, like right out of college. Don't worry about that. Like take the job that you have peace about. That's important. Take the job that you have peace about. Bible talks about, peace is like our umpire. Like that is what we should be following. Peace is our guide. And then financially, another thing I really want to encourage you that almost sounds like a contradiction to what I just said, especially when it comes time for like, your reviews with your boss or when you're going after a promotion, do not be afraid to fight for yourself and counter and ask for more money, the money that you believe that you deserve. But what's important there, this is like so huge. And I preach this to all my friends, and we're in our 30s at this point. But I preach to everyone, like, fight for yourself, because nobody else is fighting for you. Like, nobody else is going to fight for your salary like you're going to fight for your salary. But it's important to not do it out of greed, but to do it out of like the reality, because you've done the research of what is the average salary, in this industry or in this state or in this role that people are making. Like, do that crazy research. For me, it took like weeks and weeks and weeks to do this research before I was confident to ask for a certain number.
Mm-hmm.
And if that company or organization is not even willing to consider, that might speak to how they'll be moving forward. And so don't always believe like, oh, we'll assess it eventually. Like, fight for it now, because it may be a whole year or two before you see the salary that that you deserve. Not only because you're working hard, but because you look across the board, and there's all kinds of tools you can do it online. Even LinkedIn helps you out and does it for you. But you need to see like that average and decide, what's worth it. But it still should be your motivation. It's just, I don't think anyone told me that I should be fighting for my salary. And it took until I was, I graduated when I was 22, and I didn't fight for a salary till I was 29.
I fought right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I applied for it. I got a job in through market for a real estate company, and I got the job and basically started to talk about salary. And I was like, hey, I have a college degree. Like, I get a little bit more. So we negotiated a little bit, and I was on a sliding scale. Every couple months it would go up.
It's worth fighting for. And what's also important in that is personal budgeting and knowing what you really can afford, which job you can afford to take based off of your expenses and all the things that, we should be, according to Bible, doing with our money. And so, I wish someone told me that when I was 22 and 24 and 25 and 27. But I am here to tell anyone who's listening, fight for your salary, because nobody else will, as much as we think that they will.
Our company will give you $20,000 salary all day. So you got to fight for that. Fight for not fight for that, but fight for more.
Right.
Most of you out there who are probably in college and looking for a job, I think a pretty interesting base salary you'll probably get is probably like 30 to 50K range. 50 is high though. 50. If you're making 50K out of the gate, honestly, like, you're doing something good, I think. But,
I know if you're making 50K, you're probably living in Charlotte straight out of college. But yeah, I mean, numbers can fluctuate depending on industry, depending on location, etc. But again, I think it matters a lot that you see what your expenses really are and what you really do need to make in order to do what you need to do with your finances.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people don't even like track that too. There's like, oh, I got expenses, I got to do rent. I work out sometimes. I have this. I buy groceries, but also like I eat out. Like, people just don't track that. And I'm not the best at doing that too. I like saving money, but I do know at least a lot of my bigger expenses, especially for business too.
Yeah. It's important. I mean, that's another thing. Like, that's a personal thing, but it leads into professional things. Is budget. It feels daunting and scary, but it's actually a lot easier and like not as scary once you do it. And I'll leave you guys with this, since we talked about salaries and budgets and all that. But I think this is a Dave Ramsey quote, of course. I mean, what can you expect? But and I do recommend his material and his courses. I don't follow everything 100%, but what I have followed has really worked for me. But especially when I was younger, especially when I started making my own money when I was, at whatever age. I don't want anyone to compare. So whatever age where you make your own money and pay your own bills. I think we tend to let money determine what we can and cannot do. As if they're like a boss, like as if our bank account is our boss. That's ridiculous. Like money is an object and money is a tool. So why are we letting money decide what we can and cannot do with our lives? We need to recognize, like, again, God's the owner, we're the manager, we're people. And so we decide what money can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of letting it kind of run our lives and constantly give us this like heaviness of like, I don't know, like I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I should be doing this. Like that's a very stressful, like anxious way of living.
Mm-hmm.
In order to tell money what it can and cannot do for you, essentially, because it's your money that you made, you need to know what's coming in, what's going out, like every single day, every single month. And so do the work, put in the work, watch it for 2 or 3 months, and then base your budget off of that and those averages. And then you get to tell money where it goes, where it doesn't go. And I promise, like, you will live a much more peaceful life because you know exactly, well, you know, I already maxed out my clothing budget for the month, or maxed out my restaurant budget for the month. So I need to get creative here and wait till the first of the next month if I really need that pair of shoes, or if I really want to restaurant. Because you know what you have. And what's fun about that is when you do have leftover, you're like, I'm not going to feel bad about going to this awesome restaurant on the 31st of the month because I know I have that, because you know, and it's in an app in your phone or whatever. So that is that. I know we're right at the hour mark, but I just want everyone to feel encouraged that there is a peaceful way of living and dealing with money and finances and salaries. And like I said, I'm not a big numbers person, but just take those simple things and apply them. And I promise, like, the peace is coming.
Mm-hmm. I usually let people at the end just sort of give a call to action to themselves. But I mean, I just tell people can probably just connect with you on LinkedIn, right? It's probably the best way to reach out.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Like I said, I'm consistent in every environment I'm in. So you're welcome to follow me on Instagram. You're welcome to follow my LinkedIn, my Facebook, whatever. But yeah, Carly Finck, CarlyFinck. Don't forget the C in Finck, but it's just like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the same. I think I'm the only one in the world, actually, because we put a C in our last name to be different from the rest of the.
There you go. There you go. Carly Finck, y'all. Thanks for jumping on the podcast and talking about career and skill development. It was super fun, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me. Thank you guys for listening, and blessings on all your future endeavors. I'm excited to keep following you, especially through LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Bye.
All right.